Welcome. This particular yin yoga sequence is a nice practice for all the different movements of the spine. Postures will include butterfly pose, banana pose, Sphinx pose, happy baby pose, and twisted roots pose. As always, you can use as many or as few props as you wish, so gather up the ones that you like. I'm always recommending extra padding like blankets and pillows. A block or some books might be handy during one of the warm-up exercises before we get into the yin sequence. And then maybe a sandbag or some sort of soft weight to create more traction in banana pose, but that's optional. The story I'll tell during practice will be the story about one of the nighttime constellations known as the Northern Crown, Borealis. This practice will start the way it normally ends. We're going to start with a traditional form of Shavasana and then kind of work our way backwards until we make our way into the first yin posture. So just for a moment, make your way onto your back, as if this was going to be your final resting pose here. So legs are extended, they're comfortable, feet are comfortable, distance apart, arms are extended, maybe palms face up towards the ceiling, head and neck are comfortable here. We won't be here for very long, so if this is not your favorite posture, that's fine. We will do a few clearing breaths here, so maybe just get in touch with your normal breath. Notice how your normal breath is doing here. Maybe notice the pressure points underneath you, the little physical sensations running around in your body. Maybe take stock of your mental and emotional state here, and just allow it to be. And then after you've done that for a couple of breaths, we'll do I call these 4 clearing breaths or cleansing breaths here. So a nice big slow inhale, maybe through the nose if it's possible. So if it's okay to just breathe through the nose, seal your lips and nice inhale, fill up the torso completely full. And then exhale, open and let the exhale out of your mouth. It can either be just a really expansive exhale, or it can be a slow exhale. Whatever feels more complete to you, to just kind of get the air out here. And then you'll do this 3 more times. So nice big inhale again. And then a nice big releasing exhale. Big, giant, complete inhale again. Exhale. And then one final time. Make this your own here. And then staying on your back, like I said, we're kind of doing this in reverse order, so typically we do this at the end of class. Nice integration here. Bend your knees, draw your knees into your chest. We'll do some sacral rolling here. So knees stay together, maybe clasp your knees with your hands, and then gently move your knees over to one side, away from your torso, and then around over to the other side, back to in towards your torso. So you're making these knee circles, and as you make these gentle knee circles, you're noticing the changing pressure of your low back on the floor here. And after you've made maybe 4 slow, lazy circles in one direction, switch direction and make 4 lazy circles in the other direction. And again, the idea here is to just notice. And these circles can be as subtle or as exaggerated as you want to make them. I find at the beginning of practice, my circles are a little bit more subtle than at the end of a yoga practice. And then at some point, bring your knees back to center, gently roll over onto one side, and then gently push yourself up. to seating. So we'll do a couple of seated twists. I'm going to recommend sitting back on your heels with knees together. Now, if that's not possible to do, but you're close to doing that, you can always add some height with a prop. So you can take some blocks or some books, place it underneath, sit kind of with the block in between your heels, and then so that you can actually sit up a little bit higher in a root here. Otherwise, come to a cross-legged seated position if this particular shape doesn't work for you here. Take a moment to feel grounded, feel settled here. And then interlace your fingers in front of your torso. Turn your palms to face away from you, and then extend your arms long in front of you. And then start to raise your extended arms up towards the ceiling. When they get above your head, when your hands get above your head, then grow long all the way through your arms and your torso. So I like to think about starting from my tailbone and growing my torso long, maybe wiggle it a little bit and extend up through the arms, pressing the palms up towards the ceiling. And then slowly interlace the fingers and draw the extended arms down to shoulder height. Very gently begin to twist with the extended arms over to the right side, and then you can lower the arms, hands down to the ground. Then take a couple of breaths here to grow long and tall with an inhale. Exhale, see if you can twist a little bit more deeply. Maybe you don't. Maybe this is your good stopping point here. And maybe stay and just notice the stopping points. Notice the pressure here for one breath. And then bring your arms back up to shoulder height. Extend out, maybe go long through the tips of your fingers. Bring yourself back to center, and then twist gently over to the other side. Lower your arms down, hands come onto the ground or onto your thigh or your knee. Same procedure. Maybe use a breath to kind of wiggle yourself back to a nice expansive neutral torso. And then as you exhale, maybe you can find a little bit more depth here. And then gently bring yourself back to center. Maybe a counter twist if that left your back a little bit achy here. And then we're making our way into the first yin posture. The first yin posture is called butterfly pose. So come to sitting with legs extended out front. And if you have a lot of tightness in your low back or in your legs, then give yourself permission to sit up on a little bit of height. Find a blanket or a pillow or a block or a bolster or some books here. Bend both knees and allow both knees to float out to either side. Bottoms of your feet eventually come together. And for butterfly, I like to keep the heels fairly far away from your hips, but if you like having your heels close to your hips and that feels good, then you can bring them in closer. This is supposed to be a hip opener, not a knee opener. So if the floating knees feel unstable, then grab some sort of a prop to put underneath this unstable knee. Maybe it's just one, maybe it's both of them. So put the prop underneath the knee. That's kind of being grumpy here. And then from here, you can stay here with a nice neutral spine if this is intense. So we're already trying to find our edge here in this posture. And so again, give yourself permission to stay here. Or if you want to, add a forward fold to it, a yin forward fold. So maybe go up tall through your spine initially, and then see if you can hinge forward slightly from your hip sockets. I always like to point out where the hip sockets are at. So we're trying to fold deep from the hip sockets. Most of us don't go very far until we stop there. Then we can round and fold forward from the rest of the spine here, as far as we go. So for some of us, maybe our butterfly looks like this. Maybe for some of us it looks like this. Maybe for some of us it looks like this. And for some ultra flexible people, they can put their feet up above their head here. But just go until you stop. Gently relax the muscles in your torso and let your spine round here. It can hang in midair if that's okay. It's not okay. This is where you start gathering props to put under your head and your neck if your neck needs support, or build something under your whole torso here. So we'll try to stay here. Try to stay here for about 3 minutes or so. That's the time I'm choosing. If you're relatively new to yin and you're uncomfortable with these long periods of time, it's quite okay to stay for 1 or 2 minutes and just come out when the sensations in your body say, I'm done here. This is part of residing and noticing your inner landscape. So I'm going to talk about a constellation in the night sky known as the Northern Crown. That's the English word. The formal name of the constellation is Latin. It's called Corona Borealis, which literally translated means the Northern Crown. And it's not the biggest or the brightest constellation, but it's very characteristic, and it makes this nice curved shape. And I want to talk about it now while we're in butterfly, because that's what we're trying to do too. We're trying to let the spine relax and round. So you're making a nice curve, flex curve with the vertebra in your spine. So maybe think of the vertebra as the stars in a constellation that are making this very graceful C shape or horseshoe. By the way, Corona Borealis is also known as the golden horseshoe, because that's what makes it so characteristic. Is it makes this C shape that I guess resembles a horseshoe or maybe a crown or a tiara. And you can visualize your whole spine sort of doing the same thing here in this forward fold, if you are folding forward here in butterfly. We have about a minute to go, or a minute left. So check in with your sensations. Notice if you're holding any kind of muscular tension that doesn't need to be held. Maybe use your breath to calm that sensation down. Now, if that's creating pain, then that means you're too deep. Go ahead and engage some muscle, maybe come out of the posture. But if you're just noticing that you can actually release and go deeper after being here for a couple of minutes, then please do so here. Reestablishing a new edge here. So 3 principles in yin. The first principle is finding your edge, and the word your is critical. Your edge is unique to you, and you're trying to find that edge, not necessarily some kind of superficial ideal here. And your edge is your natural stopping points, which you feel rather than see. So that's why feeling and paying attention to your sensations are important here. Second principle is called stillness. But if you have kind of hung out here and resided in here for the past several minutes, then we're done being still. So go ahead and start to bring yourself out. This is a yin practice, so you don't have to jump out of this posture like a rocket. You can use your hands and slowly bring your torso back up to neutral first. Maybe engage some core muscles just to lengthen out through your spine. That might feel good. You can even add some twists or a back bend to work out the stagnation that you might be feeling here. And then you're maybe done with the hip opener. So maybe even take your hands, bring your knees back up to center and extend your legs out long. You can point and flex your feet a few times. I have a yang, a muscular counter pose to do here, just to kind of reawaken the core after that first long forward bend. And it's called the hinge maneuver. So for the hinge maneuver, you make your way onto your back. Nice. Everything, your torso, head, neck, shoulders are all comfortable, so rearrange things so that they are. Bend your knees, draw your knees into your torso, and then straighten your legs out. Point your feet up towards the ceiling here. So now you're toning through the muscles in your legs, and you're beginning to tone and engage the muscles in your core here. Arms are extended along the sides of your torso, palms face down, and then see if you can slowly, with control, lower your extended legs back to the floor. And you'll really feel the core muscles here. So maybe this happens over a couple of 2 slow breaths here. And then at some point the heels touch down. And then when you're ready, we'll move on to the next posture. Next posture is banana pose, and we're already kind of set up for banana pose here. So legs are extended out long. For banana pose is a full body lateral bend. So in order to get some of the sensation in the side of the body, which is kind of the intention of this posture, we want to keep the hips flat. To aid with that, you could use a sandbag if you have one, although you don't need one. I'll demonstrate it here though. I'll take this sandbag and I'm trying to encourage this left hip to keep from lifting up off the floor. By the way, it's okay if it lifts up a little bit. It's just, the sandbag is there to remind us that we're trying to create a lateral bend rather than a forward bend. And then you just start inching your extended legs over to one side till they stop, wherever that is. And usually they stop long before we want them to stop. The second thing to do is to start inching your torso over to the same side. So I'm inching the legs over to the right. I'm inching my torso over to the right, and as you can see, I'm trying to work myself into a crescent moon shape or a lateral bend here, or a banana shape. Now there's a lot of options here. You can play around with crossing your feet. Doesn't matter which way you cross them. Maybe you like them uncrossed here. Arms can lengthen out overhead, and if you want an additional stretch up through the left shoulder in the left arm, maybe take your right hand and kind of gently pull on that left lower arm here. Head and neck are comfortable, so if your head and neck were rolling around and got really kinked, move your head and neck around a little bit to unkink it here. And then we'll stay here for a few minutes. So you're just going until you can't go anymore. And it might be really subtle in that you might not feel that you're very deep, but frankly, if you can't go anymore, that's your banana pose. That's where you stay when you're feeling that pressure, that stopping point. It's telling you that you've arrived at your edge. It's not painful. It's not injurious. It's not traumatic. If you're feeling sharp, biting, burning pain at any time, then that means you're too deep, too far, and ultimately you're just going to hurt yourself. So it's okay to back off to where you're just feeling pressure. That pressure can be uncomfortable. But there's a difference between uncomfortable and injurious. So that's the harder practice, is trying to figure out what the difference is between the two. And there's not much an external instructor like me can tell you. You have to just learn through experience, the experience of feeling your own sensations here. And again, this is yin. It's a very allowing and accepting practice, which means I'm going to try to stay here for 3 minutes, but if you're done with this before then, give yourself permission to come out. I always like to add, and sometimes you want to stay longer, and please give yourself permission to do that. That's easy when you're watching a YouTube video like this, because you can just ignore me or pause the video and just stay and reside in this pose longer. So the third principle of yin is, once you've found your edge, once you've decided to stay and reside in stillness for a while, then you stay for some time. You create this traction, you maintain that traction for several minutes, and that sort of soaks into the deep connective tissue system of the body. You can think of joints, joint capsules, and tendons, ligaments, and the fascia wrappers, the fascial wrappers that wrap around the muscle fiber. And so when you stretch the connective tissue system, you're also stretching the muscles. When you stretch the muscular system, you're also stretching the connective tissue system. But in yin yoga, we're emphasizing the connective tissue system, which needs to stay as vibrant as the muscular system here. And so it's a totally different attitude of practice here. We just have a couple more breaths on this side of banana pose here. So when you are feeling ready, you can come out of banana pose, slowly work yourself back to your center line. So torso comes back to the center, legs work back to the center. You can take the sandbag off if you're using the sandbag here. Maybe wiggle yourself out here a little bit. I like a little bit of a forward fold after a deep lateral bend, so I bend my knees and just draw my knees into my chest. That flexes my lumbar spine, lengthens it along the ground, and that feels a little bit refreshing after the long lateral bend. You might have some of your own movements that you want to do here, but we'll get into the other side of banana pose now here. So lengthen again here. The sandbag, or the weight if you have one, now drapes across the other hip area to just psychologically remind you that that hip is trying to stay close to the floor, so you get more pressure running through the outside of the hip, maybe the outside of the leg, although we're all different. So where you feel the pressure might be different than where I'm describing it here. Legs move over to the left now. And again, maybe you can experiment with crossing the heels. And then torso moves over to the left till you're into that nice banana shape here. If bringing the arms overhead creates nerve pinching, then do something else with the arms. But if it creates a nice fascial stretch through the shoulder and arm area, then you can kind of just tug on that arm here a little bit. Settle into your banana shape again. Find where your head and neck are most comfortable. And then just come back to your breath, come to breathing here. We're making another nice C-shaped arc. In fact, we're doing a lot of that in different orientations of the spine. So really, we're kind of mimicking this string of stars that makes up the asterism or the constellation known as Corona Borealis. And like I said, it's not the biggest or the brightest constellation, and so it doesn't have any super bright stars in it. It's just so characteristic. It really does look like a string of jewels. In Arab cultures, they really did view it as kind of a string of jewels. And by the way, if you need some motivation for all of this movement of the spine, again, go back to that visualization that each vertebra of your spine is a jewel or a star in this graceful C-shaped constellation. So, Corona Borealis, or the Northern Crown, or the Golden Horseshoe, is a small constellation that begins to rise in the early to late evenings in the months of April, May, and June. And it's fairly close to the celestial equator, such that you can see it pretty much anywhere in the northern hemisphere, but you can see it also most places in the southern hemisphere. You pretty much have to go all the way down to Antarctica for it to be below the horizon. So people who's living in the southern hemisphere know about the Northern Crown too. By the way, there's also a Southern Crown that's in a different part of the sky. That Southern Crown is actually underneath a zodiac constellation known as Sagittarius. It's right underneath Sagittarius and Scorpio. So if you know where those bright constellations are, you can look for the Southern Crown there. But the Northern Crown is in a different part of the sky here. So we can slowly bring ourselves here back to center, coming out of this side of banana pose here. Remove the sandbag if you were using the sandbag here. And then maybe knees come into your chest here. Give your knees a nice hug and rock your knees from side to side. roll over down to one side, bring yourself up to seated. And then the next posture here is, now it's a back bend. So we're moving into Sphinx Pose. So make your way onto your belly, legs extended long up behind you. And then move your elbows underneath your shoulders, roughly shoulder width apart. You might have to adjust here. Trying to bone stack our upper arms so that the bones of our upper arms do the work of holding up our torso. We relax the muscles in our torso, let our spine sag into another graceful kind of curve here. So we did a forward fold in butterfly pose, doing lateral bends in banana pose, and now we're getting to the back bend here in Sphinx here. So allow your spine to just sag by releasing the torso muscles, and if you feel a light compression in your low back, that's the point to Sphinx. If it's manageable, if it's painful, then you have to move your elbows forward, come into a kind of a more graceful curve here. If you have a lot of suppleness in your spine and you're not feeling anything yet, you can always come up into seal pose here with arms straight and locked off. So that, again, there's not a lot of muscular activity going off. You're locking off your elbows so that you can transmit the weight of your torso through your arm bones here. Fingers maybe come out to the side. For a lot of us, this is maybe too intense. So we can just come back down to Sphinx. As long as you're feeling something, you're doing it. So that's a nice mantra for yin. If I'm feeling it, I'm doing it. If I'm feeling some sort of traction, compression or tension, then I'm doing something useful here. Head can stay up in Sphinx, head can hang, head can rest on a block or some sort of prop here. And once again, you're residing. Legs are extended, they're comfortable out behind you. Maybe send some breath into the place where you're feeling the light compression here. We'll stay here for a couple more minutes. So on a very clear night, you'll see this nice kind of, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's kind of a backward C curve of stars that is rising in the east in, like I said, around May or so. And it's framed by two much more well-known constellations. So above it is the constellation Borealis. And you don't really need to know what Borealis looks like, but Borealis has one of the brightest stars in the night sky in it, and that's the star Arcturus. So if you're familiar with the star Arcturus, because it's such a bright star, then you know you're in the general region of the sky that you need to look to find Corona Borealis. Underneath, on the other side of Corona Borealis, is the famous constellation Hercules. And Hercules is a fairly bright constellation, but again, not the brightest constellation. It makes this characteristic asterism that's known as the bow tie or the butterfly of Hercules. So if you happen to be familiar with the constellation Hercules, and you know where Arcturus is, then you know where to search to look for the Northern Crown, and it's right in between them. And like I said, the brightest star in Corona Borealis is a second magnitude star. It's called Alphecca, is the name of it. It's actually a binary star. It's a big A-type star that's hot. Its companion is a G-type star, much like our sun, that they orbit around each other every 17 days, and the whole system is about 75 light years away, which is still kind of in our stellar neighborhood here. That's the brightest star. All the other stars are anywhere from 3rd magnitude down to 5th magnitude, but they make such a characteristic sweeping curve here that they're easy to identify. It's easy to identify even though it's faint. So once you see the Northern Cross, or for the Northern Crown, or for that matter, the Southern Crown, Corona Australis, you'll know that you're seeing it. You know that you're seeing it. It's just, you might need a pointer star like Arcturus to find it here. So we're coming out of Sphinx. Slowly lower yourself down onto the ground. Come back to a nice neutral spine. Maybe lay your head. You can lay your forehead on stacked hands, or turn your head to one side. You can stay here, or a nice counter pose for this is what I call Warrior 4. Warrior 4 is my name for wide-legged child's pose. So you can use your hands and your arms, press yourself gently up onto all fours, onto hands and knees, and then bring your knees a little bit wide, so maybe about mat width, and then sink your hips back towards your heels until they stop. And whenever they stop, begin to lower your torso and extend your arms forward. And you can just stay here for a few breaths as a counter pose. And notice stay here long enough to see how this feels. If this feels like a nice hip opener, then you might want to stay here. The next yin posture we'll do is called Happy Baby Pose. And Happy Baby Pose can be kind of intense for some of us. If it is, then I recommend coming back to this pose and then making this posture your yin posture. So you just stay here in Warrior 4. Otherwise, if you do want to try Happy Baby Pose, slowly bring yourself up, bring yourself onto your back. When you get there, again, head, neck, shoulders are comfortable. Bend your knees, draw your knees in towards your chest. Bring your knees away from each other a few inches so that you can weave your arms up in between your knees. Now from here, you'll have to see what you can reach. So you can maybe reach your shins, maybe you can reach your ankles. If you can reach the bottoms of your feet with your hands, grab the bottoms of your feet. And then the next stage here is to start to point your feet up towards the ceiling as much as you can. And maybe in the beginning, use your arms to kind of gently pull your feet, shins, and knees down to the floor on either side of your torso as far as they go. Again, you don't have to grab the feet. If you can't reach the feet, hands can just stay on the shins here. But if you can reach the feet, you can kind of get a better grip with your fingers around the feet here. And for most of us, all we have to do for a few minutes is try to hold this pose. So the idea comes back to just staying here, softening, residing, allowing tension to drain here, watching your breath. And there's no work to be done. Now, if you're a bit of a youngster and you want a more intense stretch in the hips, you can always be young in the arms. You're trying to relax the muscles in the legs, but you can pull. You can pull as hard as you want to on your feet here to just get a deeper, intense stretch. Again, it's a young workout for your arms, but you're still yin. You're still yin in the legs and in the hips here. And then just come back to your breath here. So the reason why the constellation is named the Northern Crown has to do with Western, kind of the origins of Western civilization. It has Greek origins, and it's from myths in Greek mythology. The actual crown, it's believed, the Greeks named after a crown that was given to the princess of King Minos by the god Dionysus here. And to celebrate getting that crown, I guess at some point she placed the crown back in the heavens. That's why it's called a crown. But of course, that's only one culture. So in other cultures saw the crown as other things here. In one native peoples down in Australia, they saw this graceful curve as a boomerang. So they called it a boomerang. other people saw it as a hut or a council of elders. Native American group, I think it's the Shawnee in the United States. They saw it as a group of dancing women they would go up every night and they would dance in a circle in the stars, and then during the day they would come back down to earth here. So just a couple more breaths here in Happy Baby here. And then very gently release through the feet. Oh, you can extend your legs up long, maybe point and flex through the toes. And then any other kind of movements, and to just notice if there's still kind of Happy Baby reverberation in the hips here. And then when you're ready, we'll move into another movement for the spine, which is a spinal twist. This posture is known as twisted roots, and there'll be an alternative if twisted roots doesn't quite work for you here. So we start laying on the floor, knees bent, just like where I ended up here. Raise your left leg and wrap your left leg around your right leg. So your left thigh is kind of stacking on top of your right thigh. For some of you, it's easy to get this left foot behind your right shin. Mine doesn't do that, not if I really like my left knee. So this is as far as I go. You can bring your knees in towards your torso a little bit, and then we're going to lower the knees over to the right here. So I'm going to shift my hips over to the left just to make it easier for me to stack my hips. And then I'm going to take my right hand and guide those knees over to the right. So I'm stacking the left hip on top of the right hip. Now my left shoulder is lifted up, and I want to make sure I'm at my stopping point in my spinal twist. So I kind of inch my torso back to kind of let that left shoulder ooze back to the ground. Don't have to make it to the ground, just to where it stops here. And now I know that I'm in my spinal twist here. Left arm can come out into an outrigger, or it can move in different directions. If I want more intensity, I actually move my arm up alongside my ear. If I want less intensity in this arm and this shoulder, then maybe the left arm just stays out like an outrigger. You might need to put something underneath your knees for support. Maybe even something underneath your shoulder here. Again, head and neck are comfortable. If you want a complete spinal twist, then you turn your head and neck to face the other direction here. And then you settle and stay, find your depth here. Now for some of us, the twisted root legs create too much stress. But we do want to do a spinal twist. So an alternative that I will suggest is a seated spinal twist here. So if this is creating pain and this is just not fitting your body, then come out of this slowly. And an alternative you can try is come up to seated. Legs out in front. Bend the left knee, put the left foot on the outside of the right knee. Root through that left foot. The right leg knee can stay straight, or you can bend the right knee. Bring the right heel on the outside of the left hip. Grow up tall through your torso, and then begin to gently twist over to your left side here. You can wrap your right elbow around that left knee. Left hand comes to the ground. And then just stay here. Maybe don't stay here as long as twisted roots, because it does require a little bit of muscle engagement. But you can stay here for maybe a minute or two, or whenever you get tired of this twist. And you can twist from your upper torso down. And that maybe has less of an intense effect on when you're lying on the ground and you're trying to like swing your hips around on the ground. This is the point to maybe using this as an alternative here. Otherwise, if you're fine with regular twisted roots, you can just come back to this pose. We have about 3, 4, 5 more breaths on this side. And just notice here. So we're moving through this. There's 6 motions of the spine. There's forward bending, there's back bending, there's 2 sides of a lateral bend, and there's 2 twists here. So after your next breath, we've twisted the spine in one direction. Slowly bring yourself out of the twist. Whatever twist you're doing, unwrap your legs for a moment. Take a moment here to just kind of reset, if you will. And you can take as much or as little time as you want to. We do have one more side to do. So when you're ready, you can either do the other side of that seated twist, which is, this time it's the other leg configuration. So right knee bends, put the right foot on the outside of the left leg. Left leg can stay straight, or you can bend the left leg and then you'll twist over to the right side. Or if you prefer twisted roots, lay on your back, knees bent. This time it's the right thigh that wraps around the left thigh. Bring the knees in and then begin to lower the knees over to the left. Again, you can put props underneath those knees if they're floating. Some of you, they'll make it to the floor. Here. Right arm is out in an outrigger position. If you want some more intensity in the upper torso, maybe arm comes up alongside the ear. And if you're wanting a complete twist in the spine, head is facing that right arm. But if that's too much for the neck, just keep your head neutral here. And then we'll just hang out here for just a couple more minutes or so. And see if you can visualize this twinkling jewel of vertebrae, these twinkling stars that are your vertebrae in your spine here. Just like this very graceful constellation that, again, known by as many different things and by as many different names here. But from the Western origin, the common name is the Northern Crown. So one more minute here. This is a good time to check in. Check in with your inner landscape. Notice what your physical sensations are doing. Also notice your mental and emotional sensations. They're a part of this practice. They always are. They're never meant to be ignored. And then you can take the holistic picture as how overall are all these sensations interacting with each other? What kind of general mood do they create here? Is there something that's telling you that you need to adjust your edge? Go a little bit deeper or go a little bit less deep in any of these postures. So just a couple more breaths here. And then slowly make your way out. So knees come back up to center. You can help your knees with your hands here. Slowly uncross your legs here. And then at some point, gently roll over to one side. Bring yourself up on the hands and knees. Just a little bit of integration before our final resting pose, Shavasana. I'm going to recommend cat and cow here. So nice, stable, all four, hands and knees table position here. And then maybe start with a nice cat stretch. So flex, round your spine up towards the ceiling. And then extend your spine, nice back bend here in cow pose here. And maybe just cycle gently back and forth. Maybe 3 more cycles here between the two. You can even sync your breath with this slow Slow exhales into cat. Slow inhales into cow. Maybe as many cycles as you need here. And then if there's any final movements that you would like to make, now is the time to do those before settling into a few minutes of the way we started. We started practice in this final Shavasana position, and if you have a better position that you'd like to rest in for a while, then do that one instead. So all kinds of things you can do. If you're feeling a little bit of achiness in the low back, which might actually be expected after the spinal work, and see if bending your knees and placing a little bit of height underneath your knees helps here. Arms are lengthened if you're lying on your back, maybe far enough away from your waist so that your palms can gently roll up, face up towards the ceiling. Head and neck are comfortable. If I had another pillow, actually I can use this blanket as a pillow. I could place it underneath my head and my neck here. And then take this time to just soften everything. Give yourself permission to let the tension go here. So maybe we start with physical tension. Maybe do a little bit of a walkthrough of your own being. You can start down, clear down in your toes. So from your toes, move through the rest of your feet, up through your shins and calves, through your knees. Feel the fronts and backs of your thighs, and all the while you're trying to coax them to soften here. Then continue to grow up through the hips, through the lower torso, soften the abdomen. The places that your hips and your upper back touch the floor here. Maybe notice the space that's not touching your floor that runs through your lumbar here. Soften the torso. Rib cage is soft. The muscles in the rib cage are soft. Shoulders, arms, hands, fingers, releasing here. And up through your neck and your lower head, your chin. Soften your jaw, your cheeks, your nose, your eyes and your eye sockets, a space in between your eyes, a space around your ears and your forehead and temples. It's all the way through the very tip, the very crown of your head. Soften your brain. And once again, allow yourself to be here. Right now, you have nothing to do. You have nowhere to go. Visualize yourself as this graceful arc of beautiful stars in the night sky. Your only job is to shine light out into the universe. And continue to breathe and to use that gentle cycle of breath to soften. When you feel ready, maybe you bring yourself back, begin to deepen your breath. Start making little motions. Maybe start to move fingers and move toes. And then start to move other things. You can expand that into hands and into feet. And at some point, maybe the rest of your arms start to slowly move around, legs start to move. Maybe it feels okay to gently rock your head from side to side. At some point, gently bend your knees, roll over onto one side. Ground here, cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for your practice, but also a deep sense of gratitude for you, your unique embodiment in the universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And when you're ready, bring yourself up. Come to a comfortable seat. When you find that seat, bring your hands together at heart center. I'll end practice with an Om. You can either listen or join in. The inner starlight in me honors the inner starlight in you. Namaste.